Good morning, everybody. My name is Steve Philp, and I am the Partnership Directors here at Portugal Pathways and your host for today's webinar. It will be my pleasure to guide you all through this panel discussion tailored for international entrepreneurs, residents, property buyers and investors. Today, we'll be also diving deep into the various Golden Visa residency buyer investment options available to investors looking at this route into dual residency in Portugal, with access to all 29 European Schengen region countries. Our expert panel today will be discussing Portugal's thriving luxury property market, new developments, real estate hotspots, and the types of investment opportunities that are available. In the last part of the webinar, there will be a Q&A session. So please post your questions and your comments in the chat. I will say that we get a really engaged chat, and if we can't address all of your questions today, our team will be following up with individuals directly within the next 48 hours on any sort of specific or one-to-one meetings that need to be arranged with the relevant panelists or advisors. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce, obviously, our panelists to you today. Firstly, we've got João Incio. João is a medical doctor and scientist turned investor who brings over 18 years experience in the biomedical sector across the US, UK and Portugal. His role as general manager at Biovance Capital, who are launching a new healthcare fund, and he is the lead investor in the European Investment Fund, which is backed by the EU. Joining João, we have Phil Button. Phil has over 30 years experience as a chartered certified accountant and has held central management and strategic planning roles in the leisure industry before joining Brooks & Co. in 1998. Since founding their international luxury real estate business in 2004, he has facilitated over $500 million in property transactions. They have built major luxury developments in Florida, Antigua and the Bahamas, and are about to launch their luxury Quinta Heights development at the central Algarve, obviously here in Portugal. And finally, we have Paul Stannard. Now, Paul is the chairman at Portugal Pathways and is also an international entrepreneur who has developed media and innovation platforms as well as indexes for the international real estate world. He'll be sharing some of those findings with you all from the latest independent report from Property Market Index on Portugal's luxury real estate market and how it compares with the other international markets. He also has a background in alternative investment funds, and again, we'll be sharing this with the audience around Portugal Pathways' latest initiative related to Golden Visa residency by investment. So again, thank you all for joining us. Just a quick note for everybody watching, today's webinar is being recorded and will be sent to everybody who's registered within the next 24 hours. So I'd like to sort of start the webinar by discussing the Golden Visa Residency by Investment Programme in light of the Portuguese government's 2023 changes eliminating the real estate option. Now, despite these changes, investment in Portugal continues to grow. In fact, with global political uncertainty and Portugal's reputation for safety, demand for both real estate and for regulated investment funds for golden visas is on the rise. So I'm going to start with that, and I'm going to start with João. Can you sort of share some of your insights onto this trend?
Absolutely, and first of all, Steve, Paul, thank you so much for the kind invitation to join this panel. When it comes to Golden Visa, obviously with the closure at the back end of last year of real estate as a route for Golden Visa investment, that in a way opened a window of opportunity for other types of investment routes, and naturally for funds that are not operating in the real estate segment. So for us, Biovance, we're a fund operating in the healthcare and biotech space. In a way, is a window of an interesting window of opportunity that opened up for us. So that means that we're probably going to see some diversity or some diversification of investors coming into the golden visa, as they now look to invest in funds that perhaps operate in areas that they are familiar with, be them tech or health tech or renewable energies. And so effectively the golden visa is now a mechanism that allows investors outside of Europe to invest in areas that may be in fact aligned with Portugal's economic growth priorities. From our perspective, we're seeing some investors that are interested in a healthcare space, because naturally our fund is looking to support companies that develop new medicines and new therapies for patients. And so it's natural that an investor might feel interested in joining such project. I think we're also seeing a little bit of perhaps an increased due diligence in sort of the investments that an investor might want to make. Obviously, a fund investment is a little bit more complicated or more complex than a real estate investment, and so investors are seems to be taking their time to really do a thorough due diligence. And then in terms of just broadly speaking, and you mentioned there, Steve, the issues or the aspects that make Portugal still a very attractive place, obviously with the global geopolitical instability, where you see, in parts of the world where, violence is taking place, instability, extremisms. Portugal remains very much a country where, we're a moderate country. There's no extremisms, there's no violence. You feel safe. Combine that with nice people, good food, good weather, makes for a country a really nice place to, acquire a permanent residency and citizenship. And if you can do so by contributing to the local economy through investment in one of these funds that aligns very much with priority areas for Portugal, that's even better.
Absolutely, Joe. I echo everything you said. I mean, Phil, obviously, we mentioned, in the introduction, the demand for sort of luxury real estate again has never been higher. I mean, again, can you sort of share some of the insights from your sort of sector?
Yeah, certainly. No, thanks, Steve. Well, I think for us, as you know, we're chartered accountants by background. So over the years since we started in 1986, we've always tried to help our clients, and our clients, from various investments, whether it's real estate or other things. But what we see from all the time we spent in Florida and the Caribbean is people want to be a bit closer to home. Maybe 5 years or so ago, we started a research process into where they might go locally in Europe, and we looked hard at France, Italy, Spain and Portugal, and for many reasons. And Giles just mentioned some of those things: stability, nice place to go, climate's great, and we see that whole economic and political stability. So our process was very much keep an open book, look at many projects along the Algarve. Our clients, we've got 13,000 clients on a database. Our clients wanted that southern part of Portugal along the Algarve. So we very systematically looked at probably about 50 or 60 different developments before we picked our Quinta Heights project for various reasons, but lifestyle, investment, location, various reasons we settled on that. But it came at the end of a very long due diligence process.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you, Joe and Phil, for that insight. Paul, as someone who sort of knows, who is in know, and regarding investors making commitments of €500,000 in dual residency through Portugal's Golden Visa program, or even separately people looking to own or invest in Portugal's real estate market, what advice would you give to our audience in terms of what to look for and also what to be wary of?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, coming to a new country, whether that's, you're coming there for residency by investment, or you're coming there to live, to buy property, or set up a business, in whatever form you're choosing to make Portugal a big part of your life and your future, it's making sure that you have trusted people and make sure you have good professional people around you so that journey is a soft landing and a good experience. And I'm very pleased the fact that they separated the golden visa away from property, because it's allowed the alternative fund space in Portugal to develop other areas of inward investment. And Gel's sort of understating a bit about some of the exciting things that his fund are doing, and some of the early successes that some of his partners have had in that space, which are going to hopefully transform, that sector and how Portugal's seen in that sort of biotech space, because there's some great innovation and there's some great talent out there, and that's spilling into all types of sectors, whether it's tourism, healthcare, renewables, and even you've even got projects now that are specifically related to the startup ecosystem in Portugal. And I think if you see those investments coming from, they are a bit more long term. Your money is going to be held there for 5 to 10 years, and even if there is a successful event, the government needs your money to stay in there for 5 years. But there has been some great successes, and a number of funds are on their 4th or 5th fund, so they've delivered. And on a separate note, on the luxury real estate end, I don't know if people are aware, if you go back 20 years ago, Portugal had done about a million worth of developments in the year 2000. It did 25,000 last year. So the government that's just come in have got a big job in terms of equaling up the housing market for the young. And I think they do seem a progressive government that does want to encourage inward investment, whether that's through golden visas or through real estate. And I think we've also seen over the last 4 or 5 years that the real estate market in Portugal has really evolved from being, people buying holiday villas and apartments, to now you're getting, people are building purpose-built homes that, can encompass them running their business, their life, and their enjoyment. And the actual build quality and some of the architectural work that's going on in Portugal is as good as you'll see anywhere in Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Paul. I mean, again, I want to sort of go back to yourself, Paul, and to Jal to again find out a little bit more about the regulated and approved funds for Golden Visa. What are the sort of benefits, and what are the options, or the key benefits and the options that they offer? Jal?
Yeah, I can get started. So I think broadly speaking, in the context of Golden Visa, you have 3 sort of types of funds. You have venture capital. So these are funds that invest in early stage companies, and they support them all the way until they become more mature businesses that eventually then leads to them being either acquired or go IPO or become revenue generating companies. These usually have higher risk because the investment is early, but also potential higher rewards, so higher returns. And usually the funds last between 8 to 10 years, sometimes a little bit more. You then have private equity funds, which are funds similar to venture capital, but they invest a little bit later. So in more mature businesses, so a little bit less risk, but perhaps also a little bit less return. And then you have mutual funds that invest in listed companies. So you invest in the stock market, and in the case of Golden Visa, with a particular exposure to the Portuguese stock exchange, even though some mutual funds may be investing also outside of Portugal. So effectively, in terms of these, usually are all regulated funds, which means the teams are teams of professional investors. And here it's an aspect that I think personally it's very important if you're an investor to look for is there a professional team in place to run the fund, Is there a team with track record? Is there a team with expertise and know-how in a specific sector that they are focusing on? And just to give the example of the sector where we work on, so the healthcare and biotech is today one of the segments of venture capital that generates some of the highest returns. And that's in part because the professional teams behind the funds usually are individuals that come from the life science background. So they understand the companies, they understand the technology, and naturally when doing due diligence, they will be able to bring in their expertise and their networks to mitigate risk and ultimately then lead to better returns. There was just recently a report from PitchBook that came out looking at VC returns in Europe in the first quarter, and what they saw was that 70% of returns from all venture capital in Europe were in the biotech and pharma space. So effectively, that speaks to a segment that really is generating interesting returns, and obviously at the same time generating medicines and treatments for patients. Maybe just a couple of additional points for funds in the Golden Visa. The minimum investment is 500,000 euros, which you can spread across 2-3 different funds if you want. And maybe an important aspect also to consider is to make sure that the fund is certified, is approved by CMPM, which is the local regulator. In terms of benefits, Steve, I think there's a range of benefits for investors. First, allows them to diversify their investments. Professional management team, again, gives to some extent peace of mind and potential for high returns, and obviously also the important aspect of being a way to obtain a permanent residency or a citizenship in Portugal.
Thank you for that, Joe. Paul, I mean, you've got a lot of experience in the sort of Golden Visa alternative investment space. Is there anything that you want to add to what Joe said? Obviously, that was fairly comprehensive.
Yeah, I mean, we've recently launched a Golden Visa index of up to 40 different alternative investment funds that have been approved for Golden Visa residency by investment. And, it is really important that you try and find, a project that fits with your objectives, because if you're interested in high growth, funds like Joe's, you look who their investors are. I mean, their particular investors, their lead investor is the European Investment Bank, i.e. the EU government have actually backed their own money. Now, I know, having had a alternative investment fund in Luxembourg, getting the European Investment Fund to invest as your lead investor, the due diligence you would have had to go through would give any institutional investor confidence, let alone a retail investor that's coming in for dual residency benefits. But there are other funds that are not offering the same kind of risk reward profile that may fit your profile. That might be in tourism. There's some great funds out there that are not in real estate per se, where you invest in the operational business. One particular fund that we've worked with that's done reasonably well in recent times, and I think they're on their second or third fund. Basically, that they go into Portugal and buy up hotel assets and then put new management in, rebrand them with better branded names, and then push them back out into the market. And they see really, really strong returns. So there's a real mixed bag here. But the main reason people go for Golden Visa residency by investment is that flexibility. They don't have to take up tax status in Portugal. They can keep their status where they're from, or they can choose to do it in Portugal. They only have to be in country 7 days a year physically, as opposed to all the other visas that are 6 months. You've got to stay in country, and they get access to the whole of Europe, all of those 29 Schengen region countries for their entire family. So that includes their children dependents, but any dependents that rely on them. So that could be, grandparents as well, all for one investment.
Thanks, Paul. I mean, obviously, Joe, Paul mentioned there that you're lead investor, but who are your typical investors in Biovance Capital? As it relates to golden visa investors in Portugal, I'm thinking, and what tend to be their main motivations, and then obviously, what's the typical risk profile that you see?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question because we have a wide range of investors, and I presume most funds will do so as well. Mostly, we have institutional investors. So Paul already alluded to or mentioned the EIF, the European Investment Fund, is the largest fund of fund mechanisms in Europe. They do thorough due diligence, so it's really a stamp of quality, and we're really proud that it's the first time that they came to Portugal to invest in a healthcare fund. So we're really proud to have them. But we also have the Portuguese government through BPF, the Banco Português de Fomento, which is the local state fund that promotes entrepreneurial activities in the country. So they're also backers of ours. We have then a range of other institutional investors like insurance companies, pension funds, but also individual investors and family offices that wanted to invest with us. So it's really a wide range of investors, and that means their motivations are also very diverse. And so that ranges from the promotion of the local economy, which is certainly an element that is part of Banco Português de Fomento's mission and the EIF itself, but also financial returns and also a social impact, in particular when it comes to funds that operate in healthcare like ours. Some investors find it interesting that they are able to contribute to the development of new medicines and new treatments, but also to the development of the local ecosystem. So, to do well by doing good, to quote Benjamin Franklin. So there's certainly a wide range of motivations, a wide range of investors.
Brilliant. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Paul. And that was some real detailed and deep dive into obviously the golden visa scene in Portugal as it stands at the moment. So we're going to shift gears slightly now and focus on Portugal's booming luxury property market. So I'm going to come to you, Phil, because I understand obviously that your company is developing a new luxury project in the heart of the Algarve, a region favoured by high-profile individuals like the great Jose Mourinho. Given your impressive track record of successfully luxury developments in Florida, Antigua, and the Bahamas, I'm curious about your decision to expand into Portugal. So could you share your company's plans for the Algarve, your background in the luxury property sector, and obviously what drew you to this specific location? I think I've got some slides that are going to accompany your pics on this.
Okay, yeah. Well, thanks, Steve. Yeah, it's a good way of background. As you said right from the beginning in the introduction, we're chartered certified accountants. So our business has always been about helping our clients create wealth, navigate through various things they're trying to do, whether it's planning and in the case of Portugal, maybe a lot of our things were further afield in places like the Caribbean and the Bahamas. And people wanted things closer to home, but they also wanted those lifestyle characteristics to the product, but they also wanted to be able to get some kind of investment return. So we really started with that, doing our homework. We did a lot of research, as I said slightly earlier in the conversation. We looked at around 50 or 60 developments across the whole entire Algarve, starting on the Spanish border, working through the east, through the central area of Quinta del Lago, Valdalobo, that we knew very well. We've been going there many, many years. And then we could see people gravitating out towards the west, and specifically in the Ferragudo, Cavero area. So we looked long and hard in that area. And then what we found at Quinta Heights was just a superb piece of property in a great location, with stunning views in all directions. So you could see the sea, as you can see here from this view. So this shows the view from the roof terrace on one of our properties, looking over some beautiful parks and gardens towards the sea there and the River Arad and Portimao on the right-hand side. So what we set out to do is try to understand what our clients wanted, both from an investment and lifestyle standpoint. And then where we went with this as well was we knew that our clients like contemporary products, and there was a big scarcity of that type of product in the area. So we set out delivering a great product and great facilities. So you're looking at an image there of the rooftop cocktail and tapas bar. And again, it has stunning views across the countryside, Monchique Mountains in the background, and then the sea is about a mile and a half away, maybe slightly closer than that. So what we've got there is a site where we're trying to deliver the best new development in the area. So we've benchmarked against products that we really know well. So things like W Residences in Albufeira, which is a nice, really nice high-end resort. So here you're seeing a picture of the spa that we're building with a yoga studio. We like the pool. If any of the listeners have stayed at the Conrad in Kinstolago, they'll know that there's an indoor-outdoor pool as part of their spa setup. So we've got a similar thing here. Maybe the styling and the design and architecture slightly higher, but we set out to deliver very high-quality products and great facilities and amenities on the site. So here's a good example. We've got a very creative architect, a guy called Marcelo Santos, who runs SMS. They're based in Almondsey in the Golden Triangle. But Marcelo's got a reputation for very creative design. So you can see it here in our gym and yoga studio. We've got these lovely curves. It terraces and fits with the contours of the land in that part of our site. And we have 42 acres in total. So we have quite a big site. And on the roof, there's a yoga studio and areas to relax. So it's a really pretty piece of property set in a great location. And right in the corner of the site, very close to the sea there. Here you have an image of the exterior of the spa. So this is that indoor-outdoor. This is the outdoor element of the spa pool with the relaxation areas. And again, you can see the sun setting over the River Arad towards the direction of Portimao. So it's a really beautiful site, and we picked it for location, for the ability to deliver a great product, and then its proximity to a number of things that investors want. So we're very close to Caneros Beach, which is a lovely local beach. We're close to two of the most popular golf courses in the area, Gramacho and Valdepinta. We've got lovely restaurants, shops in the area. So we're in an area where we see growth and we see the opportunity for our clients to come in, make money in a rising market and enjoy some beautiful properties. So that's broadly the reasons why we are in that location doing what we're doing.
Absolutely spectacular, Phil. So obviously, thank you for that. I mean, I believe that Quinta Heights is its own observatory on the rooftop with views not only of the stars, but also of the mountains on one side and the sea views on the other. Paul and I know this area very well, and I know it is also featured very highly in the International Property Market Index report as one of the major property hotspots in not just the Algarve, but the whole of the country. It obviously still offers a lot of value compared with the Golden Triangle and hasn't lost its Portugal authenticity. There are some wonderful places to eat and some amazing walks on the beaches as well as in the countryside, as I've seen firsthand. Paul, while we're on the topic of real estate in Portugal, what can you share with us in terms of the findings from the Property Market Index latest international report? And are there any hidden gems or enclaves that we should be watching out for in Portugal over the next few years?
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Steve, and thank you, Phil and Joe. I mean, that development does look very spectacular, I have to say. the sort of thing you tend to see in the Golden Triangle. But I know that market very well, and I know you can get a lot more value and a lot more privacy and enjoy all the lovely things that you can in the Golden Triangle, with it only being a cab ride away. But that is a fantastic location, I have to say, that you picked there. I'm sure you're going to do well. So, but in terms of the property market index report that's just out, Property Market Index do an international report on different property markets around the world, and they do a report on Portugal twice a year. And they just published their latest report, which indicates that Portugal is punching much above its weight, and no wonder Phil has chosen Portugal over some of the other locations. The EU area is looking like it's going to have a 1.7% decline in this year, and Portugal is still going to have growth this year, as this chart indicates. But it's beating North America. It's beating the UK. And part of that is because of supply and demand, because there's a lot of investment coming in, inward investment in golden visas, but where people buy golden visas, they buy property. And some people, and I think this one's been whipped up a bit by the media, but they're calling it even the Switzerland South, which I think is perhaps taking it a stage too far at this stage. But you think about where Portugal was, 15, 20 years ago, it was seen like Greece and places like that. Now you've got investment funds having European Investment Bank backing a biotech fund. That shows you how far it's come, and that has an impact on the property market. And this report shows that there's another 5 to 10 years of growth, because it's still a long way behind other markets. But the one thing, there are some markets that have been highly inflated. Certain parts of Lisbon, certain parts of the Golden Triangle in Quinta do Lago, you won't get the value that you'll get in places like Central Algarve, and you won't get that authenticity either. And down to the stats, last year, 12.8% growth in values, in the fastest in over 14 years, outperforming other markets like the EU, and places like the Algarve saw 15% growth last year. Now, we're not going to see that this year. It's probably going to be nearer 5 or 6%. But there is still a lot of value out there. And I would urge anyone to go and have a look at the report, the Property Market Index. It's propertymarketindex.com. And go and have a look at the report. We can share it with any of the audience afterwards. But it does give you a breakdown of some of the enclaves and the ones to watch in Portugal. So yeah, that's a summary of the findings. And the thing that's driving it is regeneration investment. People coming into the country and putting real money into the country. And that's through these investment funds, renewable funds. There's a fantastic fund. Portugal's leading the way on renewables. There's more solar initiatives and innovation going on in Portugal than almost anywhere in Europe at the moment. But the demand over a lack of supply will ensure that it continues along this trajectory for at least another 5 or 6 years.
Thank you for that, Paul. So coming back to you, Phil, how does the demand for luxury property in the Algarve compare to other international markets that you've worked in?
Yeah, well, Steve, that's a really good question. And I think, we spend a lot of time in places like the Bahamas, which is a very high-end destination. But what we found with our clients, who are by and large business people or property professionals, is they wanted quality, but they wanted somewhere closer to home. And so, as you know, Portugal's on the same timeline as the UK. You can jump on a flight from most UK airports and get there in 2.5 hours. So it's a lot more convenient. But because of the quality of property in Portugal, you can get very, very high quality opportunities there. And investors want that bit of duality. They want to be able to see an investment that they're buying at the right price in a rising market. And a lot of the things we do in the early stages are about the research and trying to find reasons why. So we fundamentally try to see things from an investment standpoint at first instance, although we like lifestyle products, and akin to Heights Development is a good example of high quality lifestyle product. But we've just seen that trend of clients looking a bit closer to home, but still wanting the ability to buy quality in the right location, and then spend some time there with their friends and family, but also when they're not there, maybe rent it out, get a high yield, a high rental return, and some capital appreciation. So it's that concept of having your cake and eat it. And we've tried really hard with every development we've done in the last 20 years. And we've been involved in 55, 60 different developments in various different places in the world. We try to find that combination of great lifestyle product, but the opportunity for people to make some money in a rising market. And that's where we see, the situation in Portugal, and particularly in the Algarve at the moment. As Paul said, some of the other destinations like Lisbon may be slightly overheated in terms of prices, but we can still see some growth. Our product, we're in an area where there's quite a lot of investment gravitating towards Calvero, Ferragudo. So I think we're fortunate that we hit that market at the right time.
Thanks, Phil. And just sort of one last question on this, and just sort of wearing your chartered accountant hat. A question on the sort of due diligence process for property investments in Portugal. What should investors be particularly mindful of?
Yeah, well, we always take the view that you should do your homework and you should do that due diligence. And certainly overseas, most of our clients come from the UK. So when you're venturing overseas in a different country with a different language, you have to make sure you align yourself with the right people. So good lawyers, good accountants, good management company, all of those things. And then we say to our clients, you should ask yourself 5 fundamental questions about what you're doing. Ask yourself the type of product. What type of product are you buying? Are you looking for an apartment, a villa? And then when's the timing right for you? Is this to do with retirement, or is this a second home? And then the location, where should you buy? Is a key question. A lot of our clients historically have bought in the Golden Triangle in Quinta del Lago, Almansil and Valdelobo, but we're seeing that investment moving a little further west. And so that location, where you should buy is also really important. And that final, 2 key questions, really, 2 final questions. Why are you buying? If you're buying for lifestyle, you're buying for investment, you're buying for a bit of both, because that will color your view and shape the direction that you go in. And then how you buy. If you look at Euribor futures, which is the benchmark in Portugal, most of Europe, you'll see those futures drop in, 1%, 1.5%. So if you've got a product that's being delivered in 18 months' time or so, that interest rate will be, maybe late 2s, 3%. And so when you've got an asset that is in high demand where the yield might be quite high, so our product probably 10 or 11% net yield, but you can borrow from a local bank, let's say 2.8 or 3%. The whole question of how you buy. Do you buy with your own money, or do you buy and put a deposit down, say 30%, and give a local bank? That's an important question as well. And we will help. We've always helped our clients the last 20 years to pick the right financial partner to help process those mortgages. So those 5 key questions: where to buy, when, what, where, how, and why are those key fundamental questions, Steve, that we would ask all our questions to ask our clients to ask themselves before they buy anywhere.
Great insight, Phil. Thank you very much. I want to move sort of back to the golden visa by residency investment topic for just a second. Giles obviously mentioned that something that's close to our hearts, which is obviously healthcare innovation, and Paul's got some insight into the renewable energy sector. So taking that into account, could both of you guys give us some more insight into why Portugal is such an opportunity for these sectors? I'll start with Joe.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of healthcare, it's booming with innovation, and that has a lot to do with the very strong research ecosystem that exists in Portugal. So in the last maybe 2 decades, there's been quite a significant public investment in research and in Portugal, and in particular research in the life sciences. So we've seen the government providing a lot of R&D incentives, financing effectively PhD programs and postdoc programs, which allowed many Portuguese to go abroad and do their PhDs abroad and then come back and set up their research groups, conducting research that it really is truly world class. And so that and that also allied to a very good national health system. I was a medical doctor working in Portugal as well as a research scientist. So I've seen that it's firsthand. It's really a good quality healthcare system with all its flaws, but compared to most other systems is one of the best. And so what we're seeing now is that strong research ecosystem and that sort of healthcare infrastructure is translating now into companies that and venture startups that are really trying to capitalize on that research excellence. And so we see, particularly in the life sciences, Portugal punching well above its weight in terms of number of new patents, in terms of attracting very prestigious grants in Europe, like the ERC grants, and even setting up new companies. It's doing really a better job than most, or at least the average in Europe. Portugal is at times, and I think Paul, you've mentioned it already, is at times considered the European Silicon Valley, because particularly in Lisbon, a lot of tech companies were born there, and so I think we have about 7 unicorns now, which is the same as Spain, and even more than Italy. So that gives you a sense of, for a small country like Portugal, the vibrant sort of ecosystem in general in tech, but in particular in biotech as well. We have a unicorn in the healthcare space, and very recently there was an example of a company called CellMabs, a biotech company that were developing really transformational therapies for cancer, and an investment led by some members of Biovance team led to it being eventually acquired by BioNTech, which is, as we all know, the COVID vaccine manufacturer. And that speaks really to the quality of science and the quality of the companies that you can find in Portugal. That acquisition by BioNTech of CellMabs could generate potentially a return of about 100 times, and the transaction value was about 1 billion. So really great quality, great science, and now we're seeing that being translated into really good, high quality companies as well.
And one of your guys was in at the beginning of that. He was one of the investors, wasn't he?
Correct. Yes.
Along with
That's
another
right.
one that was 7x. So
That's right.
Yeah, I don't think those sort of things can be underplayed. I mean, just reiterating what Jal said, Portugal is encouraging talent. They've got low tax environment under the digital nomad visa scheme. So they've got the new replacement for NHR coming in next year that is again linked to bringing in talent and professionals and startups, entrepreneurs, researchers, scientists And I think, it's a new playground for money to come and invest. And with the European Union now seeing it as a contributor rather than a deficit, always having to bail out the smaller countries, I think you'll see more investment from Europe. I think you'll see more investment from money coming from the States and places like Canada, Singapore. We're seeing it right across the board. And I know Phil was saying earlier, he gets a lot of people because of the historic nature of his background with the UK. But I had meetings this morning with a Canadian and American who are all looking at the Central Algarve, and they're bringing their money to invest. They're looking at a golden visa, and they're looking to buy property because they want a different lifestyle, but they still want to use their minds and use their entrepreneurial spirit. So I think, Portugal's in a really good place at the moment.
Right, brilliant. Thanks for that, Paul. I'm quite conscious of the time. We're sort of 11 minutes before the hour, and I know that Phil's got a flight to catch to Portugal as well. So I want to jump on to the Q&As. And as I said, if we don't get through all the questions, which we're not likely to, judging by the amount of engagement we've had in the chat, as I said, the team will be in contact and will post those answers on our website. And if there's anything specific or personal, we will reach out to you individually to sort of take those questions further on. And so I want to have a quick look here in the chat. So we've got a question from Adriana, and she is from California, and she's currently looking at investing in a golden visa and moving obviously with her family, and was wondering how long the process takes. Are there any other costs to take into account over and above the €500,000 investment? And it's quite a long question. And how long is the money invested for? And what is the downside protection? What downside protections are there? Sorry, it is quite a long question. Paul, I don't know if you got all that, but if you could maybe.
No, I think I've understood that. Yeah. So the process is much quicker than it was. There was a lot of negative publicity in previous years, but the government have made it simpler, which is now helping the immigration and the advisors as well as the funds. So, once you pay your money, you're pretty well guaranteed that you're going to go through the process. There is a timescale to get through it, but it should now be a 3 to 6 month process. But you will you can start benefiting as soon as you pay your money and that you've engaged with professionals to work with the fund that you've chosen or the wealth managers that you've chosen, or both. And the costs involved, typically there is the initial setup costs, which is separate to the fund, that you'll need your immigration lawyer to do, or Portugal Pathways can put you in touch with the relevant people, and that does depend somewhat on the complexities of your family situation and your wealth. It's somewhere between 10,000 and 13,000 euros is that cost, and there are renewable costs nowhere near that as the follow-on. But in terms of downside protections, you need to make sure you've got professionals on there with you asking the right questions. If somebody is saying you can have your money guaranteed after 5 years, if you want to, what are the downside protections in place for those sort of things? And equally, if people are asking for subscription fees and other things, you have to bear in mind all of that's got to be paid for before you start earning your return. And I'll bring a sort of hurdle rate before they share in any upside. So these are some of the questions that you should be asking.
Brilliant. Thank you, Paul. Moving on, we have a question in from Peter. who is interested in buying a property in the Algarve, and he wants to know how he avoids being in an environment that is too expat orientated and or sort of lacks that Portuguese authenticity in the culture, as we were speaking about earlier. He's saying he looked into the Golden Triangle, but things there are expensive for the money, and he would want to be happy within half an hour or an hour of Faro Airport. So again, obviously Phil and obviously Paul, I think you could probably both take this question. So Phil, I'm going to go to you first.
Yeah, no, I think it's really, really good question. I think a lot of expats tend to gravitate to certain areas, and you'll find in the Golden Triangle, Kinstelago, Beldelobo, lots of British people, lots of Irish people. Property prices are relatively high there, and people like it for the reasons they like. But we've got a lot of clients. I've got 3 or 4 clients that are buying from me on the Kinta Heights development that actually own property in Kinstelago. And the reason they're moving further west is they see that more traditional Portuguese, that quintessentially Portuguese environment. We're very close to a little fishing village in Ferragudo. You can wander around those cobblestone streets. You're in a beautiful environment, and you can buy a very, very high quality property for about a quarter that you would buy in somewhere like Kinstelago. So we're definitely people are looking for that more natural environment. The rock formations and the cliffs become prettier as you go further west. It becomes a little bit more remote. You see beautiful beaches, but you can still get that same high quality in property as you move a little further west. So I think we looked for that as well when we did our research in the beginning. And what we say to our clients is, look, don't make any decision before you've seen anything. We typically invite our clients to come as our guests and stay for 2 nights, 3 days. And we typically show them everything. And we say to them, look, for any of our people in the UK or anywhere else that we perceive to be our clients, this has got to be right for you. We like our project, but come and see it, and we will show you everything. So we'll show you what's driving the market there, the comparable properties. We'll show you the lifestyle elements to it. We'll introduce you to the lawyers, accountants, management company. Then you'll be able to make an informed decision on whether it's right for you or not right for you. And at that point, we can take it further. But if it's not for whatever reason, then, you don't do it. So that's been our approach, not just here in Portugal, but everywhere that we've been involved with property for the last 20 years. And I think, my view is if you look after people, then it builds longevity and it builds those relationships. So that's what we do. I think we're very fortunate that we've hit that Kinta Heights development in that Ferragudo area at exactly the right time. And a lot of people are seeing the value of going slightly further west to that kind of, central, the west of the central section, 35 minutes from Faro to get to our site. So not too far on the main A22 motorway. So easy to get to, so we're seeing that really, Steve, all of those reasons. What people coming to us.
And I'd reiterate that, sometimes if you come a little bit west of Faro, you get a little bit more of that authenticity, but you also you can still go to the Golden Triangle. It's easy to do if you want to go and spend the evening or the day there. But it's got celebrity status as well. There are famous people that live in and around that area, not far from where Phil's development is. Directors of Bond movies and Mourinho's, but they're very quiet, understated. Whereas it's slightly more overstated.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Paul. That site, when you mentioned Jose Mourinho, his father comes from that Ferragudo area, and there was the previous owners of the site, Kinta Heights. They had 26 villa plots, and Jose Mourinho and his family bought 2 plots, and they built a house and some sports facilities, and then people are gravitating out that way. The guy that's built a lovely home called Skyfall, who is the Bond reference, Paul's Bond reference, is literally 2 minutes down the road from us. So you're seeing all of these pockets of high quality investors and investments, whether they are celebrities or successful business people. People are generally seeing the value in taking that little drive, half an hour or so, towards the west, and many reasons to be there.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Paul. Again, I think we can get to one more question before we draw a line. And this one is for Jiao. So Jiao, this was from a lady called Maria, who's left a question in the chat, and her question is, what kind of updates would we get in terms of how our investment is performing, and would we be able to split our investments across 2 funds if we wanted to?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of updates, investors can expect to have regular updates, really. Quarterly calls to where we share information about the portfolio company, the performance of the fund, and financial statements as well. And then you have an annual report where we go into even more detail. So we provide a more in-depth financial analysis. We provide market insights. We provide future outlooks for the sector, and then really ad hoc whenever there is any sort of event related to the portfolio, whether it's a sale of a company or whether it's something happening or a new investment, we'll certainly be communicating. And I think related to this sort of aspect of reporting is an aspect that I think very important when assessing funds, which is to look for if the fund has institutional investors, because the institutional investors will be always very keen on reporting. They have reporting requirements that are quite strict, and so that's one aspect. The other sort of advantages of having institutional investors are they usually will have conducted a very thorough due diligence, so they will have assessed the fund, and so that gives peace of mind to individual investors that may not have the time or the expertise or the disposition to really conduct their own. And so they can be reassured that if you see large institutional investors, that due diligence has been done. And then in terms of also the way funds are designed and constructed, institutional investors have some requirements, and they will not allow certain aspects. For instance, and I think, Paul, you mentioned there the subscription fee is one aspect that perhaps certain institutional investors will not be looking at it with good eyes. So always do your due diligence, always look carefully and take your time to assess the funds and see who's backing, and in particular if you have institutional investors or not.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Joe. I'm fully aware that we haven't been able to answer every question from the audience, but as I said, we have to respect everyone's time. As I said, Phil's needing to leave to catch his flight, and obviously we've just gone over the hour that we've allocated. However, we can organise discovery call meetings with any of our panellists or their teams, or other investment partners for both the Golden Visa Residency by Investment or separately investing in luxury real estate in Portugal. So Portugal Pathways can organise this for you directly, and we will reach out to you should you require support or introductions. Now, there's lots of resources on our website for Golden Visa and for real estate. And if you look out in the chat now, you'll see links to those relevant pages for both put out by our team. Just sort of to wrap up, I'd like to go sort of around the room and really just ask each of the panelists to leave the audience with sort of one key takeaway from today's discussion. So Phil, I'm going to come to you first.
Okay, well, thanks, Steve. Well, thanks for the opportunity, first of all, to be on the panel. And I would say, my key takeaway is with property investment, it's often an emotive purchase, particularly it's a beautiful lifestyle property in a great location, and that's essentially what we're offering. But put that aside and do your homework, do your due diligence, make sure you're buying for the right reasons. Do not buy anything without doing your homework. That's my takeaway, irrespective of whether it's a great looking lifestyle property or not. Do your homework.
Absolutely. Great one. Joe.
Yeah, very much the same. The three key takeaways is due diligence. So make sure you look at the individuals behind the funds. Do they have track record or not? Institutional investors, and really choose something that makes sense to you and in line with your risk tolerance profile.
Right. Thank you for that, Joe. And Paul, I'm going to sort of leave the last word.
Without being repeating what the other two have said, because I totally agree with it. So what I will say is, in help of that due diligence, get in touch with Portugal Pathways. We can help you through our Golden Visa Residency by Investment Index. We can also share with you insight via the Property Market Index report, and we will help in any regard to put you in touch with professional advisors that can guide you along that journey, whether it's through Golden Visa or through investing in property, or both.
Great. Thank you, Paul. So it really just leaves me to thank everybody, obviously the audience for joining us, and obviously our guest panelists today. Obviously, there will be a recording of this webinar going out within the next 48 hours. Our next webinar, which is buying or building a new home in Portugal, is on Tuesday, August the 20th. The link will be on our website, and we'll be contacting you all with obviously the registration link for that. It just leaves me to say a big thank you again to everybody, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you very much, everybody.